Okay, guys, thank you very much for joining. Great. So, as I was remarking at the beginning of this class, tonight we're going to be discussing the listening section, which is a very important part of the TOEFL exam. And as you well can perceive, it's let's say, the very last thing we're going to be discussing in these classes, okay? The listening section. So, well, let me start then with some general aspects and definitions on this section so that we can continue, all right? So I was trying to mention that the listening section is going to be testing your ability to understand spoken English, of course. And now, there are two different areas that are going to be evaluated in the listening section. The first one is your basic comprehension, of course, of spoken English. And the second one is pragmatic understanding. Now, if you're not familiarized with this term, the best definition I can offer you is that basically, pragmatic understanding is the speaker's attitude and degree of certainty that possesses when speaking. And also, of course, this is related to your ability to connect and synthesize information as you listen to this spoken English, okay? So that is basically what is going to be evaluated in this part of the exam. And as I say, it comprehends a very important sphere of this language that is, of course, listening. Now, there are two types of materials that you're going to be confronting during this time. And these materials are lectures and conversations. With you, dear students, we have had the opportunity already to discuss and to, of course, be exposed to both of these materials. We have been listening to lectures and conversations before in previous sections of the exam. Nonetheless, of course, in this part of the exam, the conversations and the lectures are going to be way more extensive. And now maybe you are wondering, how many of these lectures and conversations am I going to get? Well, that's a very simple question to respond. You're going to get from 3 to 4 lectures, okay? From 3 to 4 lectures in the listening section in order to, of course, listen to and respond as you did in the reading section. And each of these lectures, by the way, is going to be lasting for approximately 3 to 5 minutes, all right? So as you can see, these are way longer than before, right? Because in the past, our conversations, lectures used to be no more than 1.5 minutes, things of that sort. But now they are consistently larger and longer, okay? Now, obviously, you're going to have questions to respond depending on the lecture you receive. And when you're going to be confronting a lecture, immediately after, you have to respond 6 questions, all right? So per lecture, you're going to be receiving 6 questions in order to respond, all right? So let us repeat this once again. 3 to 4 lectures, right? 3 to 4 lectures in the listening section. Each of this during or lasting for 3 to 5 minutes. And at the end, when you listen to them, 6 questions per lecture in order to respond. Now, there is a second type of material, as I told you, and those are conversations. How many are you going to get in the TOEFL exam? From 2 to 3 conversations, all right? And these are going to be conversations of 2 speakers, all right? And each of them is going to last for 3 minutes approximately, all right? And well, how many questions are you going to have to respond on each of these conversations? 5 questions, okay? As you can see, you have 1 less question compared to lectures. But anyways, well, conversations, right? Conversations of 2 speakers, not very much difficult, trust me. Maybe the lectures are going to be a little bit more challenging, but the conversations are fine. And well, before I explain the variation on why are these lectures and conversations not fixed, because as you can see, you can receive from 3 to 4 lectures and from 2 to 3 conversations. Let me explain something else. Now, in this part of the exam, dear students, something tremendously important is to learn how to take notes, all right? And for that purpose, well, you can take notes on any audio item throughout the test to help you answer your questions, all right? And you're going to have from 41 to 57 minutes to complete this section, okay? And well, the reason why this is very important is because, as you know, when you are listening to something, as we have done actually, in the previous sections we have been discussing together, you have to take notes because the questions, of course, request information out of all the data and knowledge you have received from those lectures and conversations. And given that, of course, we don't have a perfect memory, we need to take notes in order for us to remember and refresh our memory at some point during these questions. So given that these lectures and conversations are longer, the necessity of taking notes, I think it's more evident than ever. So we're going to have to look at some techniques in order for us to improve our notes. Okay, we're going to do that today. And I think it's very important, okay, for you to improve that particular sphere. Now, as you can see, there is a variation as well here from 45, or excuse me, from 41 to 57 minutes. This section is going to last. I repeat, from 41 to 57 minutes, this section is going to last. Okay, and you have approximately from I would say from 1 to 1.1 minutes per question in order to analyze it and respond it. Actually, that is something that has been changing lately. I've been reading some reports in the last weeks that tell that, well, TOEFL or that ETS is deciding to decrease the length of the time you get for responding each of these questions. And now instead of giving you 1 minute per question to respond, they're giving you from 45 seconds to 1 minute as a maximum. So we're going to have to change that, and of course, to prepare for responding the questions in 45 seconds, okay? Trust me, you're going to understand this way better when we see this on the simulation, okay? Anyways, this is it with regard to the general aspects, and maybe you're wondering, why the variation? Well, once again, the experimental version. As I told you in the reading section, we have the experimental version in the listening section too, which means that normally, if you don't get the experimental version, but the normal version of the listening part, you're going to receive 3 lectures and 2 conversations. And then your entire listening section is going to last for 41 minutes. Now, on the other hand, if you receive the experimental version, that as I say, it's merely an extra passage to listen to, and well, in this conversation, in this opportunity, an extra conversation, an extra lecture to listen to, and of course, extra questions, then you'll get 57 minutes in order to respond and listen to all the material. That's the reason why we have such a variation here. And of course, as it happened in the reading section, to receive the experimental version, it's something totally aleatory and random. You cannot take that decision. And if you do receive it, don't worry. As I say, always listen to every single passage, every single lecture and conversation as if it were legitimate. But if you receive the experimental version, as I told you, you know that the extra lecture and conversation they give you in the experimental version are not going to be evaluated. They're merely going to be an exercise for ETS to receive feedback, let's say, in its new questions, mechanisms, etc. Okay, but as I always recommend you, respond to each of these passages as if you knew they are very much legitimate and are going to be punctuated. Okay, very good. Let me continue then. So let me please show you right now this on the simulator. I think it's very important for us to look at this. And of course, if you have some question, you can raise your hand and we can very gladly resolve it, okay? Let me open here the simulator and we're going to be able to examine this, okay? Here, here, here. Okay, very good, we're ready. So let me show you this. So when you enter the listening section, dear students, the first thing you receive, a conversation or a lecture. By the way, the order in which you receive these conversations and lectures is also totally aleatory. You could receive, let's say, as your first material, a lecture or a conversation instead. And then the next material is going to be another conversation or another lecture. The point is that at the end, you are going to respond. If you receive the normal version of the listening section, as I told you, 3 lectures and 2 conversations. Whereas if you receive the experimental version, you're going to receive 4 lectures and 3 conversations. The order in which you receive them is aleatory. Sometimes it's the 3 conversations first, then the lectures, or it could be the other way around. It's just something aleatory. And it doesn't matter at the end because you have to listen to everything at the end, right? Anyway, so as I say, you listen to this and just let me click here in order to show you that, of course, this is longer, okay?
Listen to part of a lecture.
As you can see here, This is a lecture in this opportunity, and it lasts for 4 minutes and 34 seconds, which means that, of course, you're going to be listening to this for a while, right? It's a considerable listening audio. Now, as I said, we're going to be talking about notes tonight. Don't worry about that. But as I always tell you, here in this opportunity, I can reproduce it, but on the exam, you're not going to be able to do so. The computer is going to reproduce everything automatically, and you're not going to have the chance to pause the video or to repeat it. You listen to this lecture once, and the same for all the other materials, the conversations and the next lectures, okay? So yeah, you listen to this completely, all right? And when you finalize, the computer is going to take you to this second part. And here is where you start responding to questions. Now, as I told you, you have overall in these sections, or excuse me, in this section, if you receive the normal version, 41 minutes in order to respond to all the questions and listen to all the materials. If you receive the experimental version, you're going to get 57 minutes instead. Now, remember that in the reading section, I told you, one of the things I liked the most about that part of the reading section was that you were able to administer your own time. That is to say, if you found the first question, right, very easy, you could respond it in, I don't know, 10 seconds. And then in the second question, when you found it to be a little bit more difficult, you could stay there for more time if you wanted, because you were the one administering your time. That is not the case here, dear students, because as I told you, per question, ETS gives you approximately 45 seconds to read and respond the questions, okay? There has been a decreasement of the time they give you for responding each question. I've been reading about that this week. And as I said, we're going to practice in the following days by using 45 seconds to respond to each question, okay? Because sadly, when you are in this part of the exam, ETS doesn't give you a chronometer, like, I don't know, like this one here on my screen, right? They don't give you a chronometer. In the listening section, they show you the question, the answers, and you have to respond as fast as you can. Because as I say, calculating approximately, you have more or less 45 seconds to respond to each of these questions, okay? More or less, because as I say, ETS doesn't display how much they give for responding each question. Sadly, I don't know why they do not do it. But the reason is, as I say, or the thing is that you're going to have to respond this as fast as you can, because you are never going to get more than 45 seconds, okay, to respond to each of these questions. They give you the time in this case. For example, if you find this question to be super easy, you can respond it in 10 seconds, fine. But that doesn't mean that in the next question, you can, let's say, say something like this. Hey, but in the other question I just responded in 10 seconds. Can I get more time for this one? You cannot. As I say, each question has a limited time, that is 45 seconds. So you have to respond each of these questions as fast as you can, okay? That's the idea. So in this first question, as you can see, we have, well, we're gonna be talking about this, of course, throughout the week, the type of questions, etc. But the thing is that, as you can see here, all these questions are also going to be multiple choice, all right? That is to say, you're not going to have to type your response at any point. The only thing you're going to have to do is to choose your answer, okay? Like this one, this one, this one. Now, in this case, dear students, if you look at this at my screen, there is a button that says next, but there is no button that says previous. And that's because, for example, if you respond to this one, right, and you press next, before the time takes you to the next question, right? Because what happens if you stay here for the 45 seconds you have as a limit? If you stay here for 45 seconds, the computer is going to take you to the next question automatically, even if you don't press next. Now, if you respond to questions in, let's say, 20 seconds, and you don't want to be here in this question anymore, you can press next. But you have to know that when you press next, you are not going to be able to come back to the previous question, all right? This is different here in the listening section, all right? So look at this. You are here in the second question, and there is no button that says previous, right? So the first question, even if you didn't respond it, because some people simply do not choose an answer, you cannot go back to it. So a very good recommendation here, always go for one answer, okay? As I told you in the reading section, there is no penalty in the TOEFL exam if you get wrong answers. So if you have to guess, it's fine, because the only possibility or a scenario is that you fail and nothing happens to you, because, as I say, there is no penalty, or you actually succeed and you choose the correct answer by guessing. And that's fine, because you're going to get more points even if you guessed, okay? So as I say, you cannot go back to the previous question. And the better, or let's say the best idea or technique to approach this is that in the case you are not actually very much sure or secure about the answer you're going to choose, press any of the answers you consider to be the most accurate one or probable one, and choose it and go to the next question. Better if you never leave a question in blank, okay? Because as I say, in the worst scenario, the only thing is that you're going to fail. But if you, of course, succeed in choosing the correct one, better, more points for you, okay? So you respond, you continue clicking next, or the computer takes you to the next question. And as I want to show you, you're going to have to respond. Sometimes, by the way, we're going to be seeing this as in the reading section. You're going to have to choose more than one answer. Okay, as in this one, as it says here, choose 2 answers, but we're going to discuss this throughout the week. Next, but as you can see, all of them are multiple choice anyways, right? You don't have to write anything. And here the same. So this is a lecture, right? So given that this is a lecture, you have 6 questions. Remember, per lecture, 6 questions. Per conversation, 5 questions. There is 1 less question for conversations, but for lectures that are longer, you get 6 questions to respond, okay? So what happens when you respond to the last question? As you can see, this shows you the next material. In this case, let's see what it is.
Listen to part of a lecture.
Okay, so it's another lecture. So as I told you, the order in which you receive your material is aleatory. It could be that on the exam, your first exercise or material is a lecture, and the second one is a conversation, and the third one a lecture, and the fourth one a conversation. Or it could be that the first 3 of them are all of them a lecture, and then all of them conversations at the end. Could happen, okay? Aleatory and random, okay? At the end, as I say, you have to respond to all the materials, so don't worry about that, okay? Now, that's it with regard to the questions and also with regard to the menu here, okay? As I say, this is how it works with regard to the menu of the listening section. And well, when you finalize this part, of course, after the listening section, as we have discussed, comes the break, right? The 10 minutes break. So when you finalize the listening section, when you are in your last material, doesn't matter if it is a lecture or a conversation, when you finalize responding the listening section, you're going to see a message on your computer that is going to say something like, well, you have finalized with the first part of the exam, go out for a break of 10 minutes, and you will have the chance to leave your computer, go out if you are taking the IBT version, and well, go and drink water, go to the bathroom in the test center you are, or if you're at home because you are taking the IBT version, home edition, you can go to your bathroom, you can be out of the, as I say, of the range of view of your reviewer, right? Because there's a person looking at you in the IBT home edition, you can get out of there just at this point in the 10 minutes break that comes, as I say, after the listening section, all right? So that is what is going to happen here after you finalize the listening section. Is there any question, dear students, with regard to anything we have discussed until this point? Elsa, is there any question? Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much, Elsa. Great, so no questions. All right, my pleasure. So let us continue then discussing, as I told you, something very important for this section. That is the listening notes 101. As I told you, given that in this part of the exam, the conversations and lectures are going to be longer than before, because we have actually confronted and, of course, faced conversations and also lectures in the past, in the previous sections. But now, as I say, in this case, we have more extensive ones. And imagine it, if in the past, when we had these lectures and conversations that didn't last more than 2 minutes, if all of them are going to be lasting more than 3 minutes this time, the necessity for taking notes is evident, right? Because we need to remember that information, given that, of course, the questions are about the data and knowledge we receive in those lectures and conversations. Therefore, we need to take notes very much efficiently in order to use them later on when responding to questions, all right? So that's the reason why I want to offer you some techniques and recommendations for improving the efficiency of your notes, okay? Let us discuss them. So to begin with, okay, don't forget that all the sheets of paper and pencils you'll need to take your notes will be provided to you by your test center. This is, of course, if you're going to take the IBT version, right? In which you have to go to a test center, as we have discussed before. Now, as I say, when you go to the IBT version, you go to your test center, they give you everything. They give you the pieces of paper, they give you the pencils, eraser if it is necessary, they give you, as I say, everything you need. You don't have to worry about anything, okay? in the IBT version. Now, it's different if you're taking the home IBT version, because in that case, as I told you before, you cannot use sheets of papers and also pencils in order to take your notes. You cannot use sheets of paper. Instead of using sheets of paper and also pencils to take your notes, you're going to be required to write them down on a small desktop whiteboard. You know what is a whiteboard, right? Una pizarra blanca. It's basically these whiteboards that nowadays universities are utilizing instead of the old boards, right, with carbon. In this case, you have the chance to, or you have the necessity to get a whiteboard on your own. That is to say, you need to buy one, to purchase one, or to, of course, borrow one from somebody. And this must be a desktop whiteboard, okay? It cannot be, as I say, a very large whiteboard as the ones that universities have nowadays. It must be a desktop whiteboard, right? Tamaño de escritorio, like very much small. And here you can write down your notes, okay? That is the necessity of getting this particular whiteboard if you're planning to take the home IBT version, okay? So of course, as I told you, taking the home IBT version has certainly its disadvantages, and you have to oversee them, you have to succeed them, and you have to, of course, overpass them, all right? Now, this is very important to you. And by the way, of course, if you're taking or if you're using a whiteboard, that means that you are not going to have the chance to write with pencils, right? But with erasable markers, right? And if you're using erasable markers, notice that when you have a desktop, right, you are forced to write, let's say, bigger than if you were writing on your normal sheet of paper, because we have a marker that is very much, that is not very much thin, but it's actually very much, as I say, extensive and it has volume, and therefore our letters are bigger. And if that's the case, that means that if at some point you don't have more space on your whiteboard, you're going to have to erase what you had previously written in order to, of course, continue writing on your whiteboard. Because certainly here the space is not limitless, and you have the necessity to constantly erase if you want to continue writing more notes. So as you can see, it's a little bit problematic, but if you can, as I say, overpass this difficulty, you can still take the home IBT version, okay? But it's very important for you to know this, all right? Now, what you can do to save time and maintain order is to prepare your sheet of paper or your whiteboard with some points marking the beginning of each note. What do I mean by this? When you have your sheet of paper, if you're taking the IBT version, or your whiteboard, if you're taking the home IBT version, a very good recommendation I have for you is, before writing your notes, try to make some sort of organization like this. Write down some points marking the end and, of course, the start of each of your notes. And by doing so, when coming back to your notes and reviewing them in order to look for an answer you are not very much sure in the questions, you're going to be able to access them very quickly and in a very organized manner. Because imagine if you don't have any type of point or marker to determine where are your notes starting and where are they ending, it's going to be a chaos, right? A total chaos. So you don't want that. So try to always make some sort of mark that tells you, hey, here you are starting and you are finalizing one note, so that you can read very easily and quickly if you want to access them in the future, right? So this is a very good technique to maintain, as I say, efficiency and velocity in your notes, all right? And you can do also, of course, the same on your whiteboard if you are taking the home IBT version, all right? Now, further, try not to be very extensive, okay, dear students, with any of your notes. Write down just general ideas as concisely as you can. You are not listening to write. You are writing to remind what you have listened. This is something very interesting, and people do not seem to realize it. People pay too much attention to their notes. And the reason why they do so, I think it's because they are forgetting that these notes that we are taking are not actually for, because they are going to be evaluated. And you have to know that these notes are not going to be evaluated. They are not, okay? What is going to be evaluated? It's your responses. Your responses are evaluated, but your notes not. your responses are not evaluated. So if your responses, excuse me, I'm so sorry, I'm going to reformulate my sentence. Your responses are indeed evaluated, but your notes are not evaluated. Therefore, it doesn't matter if your notes are very much, I don't know, unconstant in the sense that you are not writing super straight, or it doesn't matter if your letters are ugly, or it doesn't matter if you're, I don't know, if you don't have perfect balance and efficiency in your notes, it's okay. At the end, the only reason why you take notes is because you want to remember what you are listening. So your main focus and your main objective and preoccupation must be listening and understanding the conversations and lectures you're going to be receiving. Notes are merely a means and manner to remember what you're listening, okay? So always have your notes as a secondary priority. You must prioritize your listening and understanding of the material you're receiving, and taking notes, as I say, as a secondary and let's say precaution mechanism to remember them in the future. But your particular emphasis should be on listening very well and understanding, trying to really internalize what you're listening, okay? Because some people forget that and they try to take more notes instead of listening. And that's not the thing here, okay? It's about listening. You could actually practice this without taking notes, and it's okay. But as I say, it's good if you write notes, because at the end, they can be helpful for you, okay? How to take notes on this section. Very important thing. You should write down only information words and leave out function words, okay? Excuse me. Oh, no, I think it's fine. So let us determine this. What are information words or info words? Information words are meaningful words that contain significance, such as people, places, actions, and descriptions. Basically, these words are always conveying a singular idea. They're always conveying something very much immediately to your mind. If you listen, for example, to the word table, what comes to your mind? A table, right? A piece of wood that is utilized in order to eat on that furniture, or something that you use to discuss something with people and to prepare meetings, etc. Now, if I say that, what comes to your mind? Nothing, right? That, because that is a preposition we use in order to connect things. It could be I don't know, it could be a demonstrative preposition, a lot of things. But that, like the word that, doesn't represent anything, right? But table is an information word because it represents an idea, a particular thing, which is, of course, as I say, a piece of wood, a piece of furniture. So my recommendation for you is write in your notes only information words, words that represent ideas, places, actions, descriptions very rapidly to your mind. Because remember, what is the main function of these notes for your performance? Remembering. So if something helps you to remember easily, that's what you want to write down on your notes. Now, opposite to this, you have function words, and those are the ones that you shouldn't write on your notes. Function words are things like prepositions, like that, for example, right? That is a preposition. Articles, auxiliary verbs like have, modals like may or could, which provide almost no useful information about the material. As I say, when you read the word that, when you read the word may, could, nothing particularly special comes to your mind. We use these words in our language to make a more connected and, let's say, complex communication, right? More, more perfected and, of course, somehow balanced and aesthetic. But at the end, what helps us to remember very easily are information words. And those are the words you want to include in your notes. And those are the ones you want to write instead of the function words. Now look at my screen. On my right side, I have some examples of this. Imagine that you listen to this sentence in one of your lectures. If it says, insomnia, a consistent difficulty in falling or staying asleep, is the most common of the sleep disorders. If you listen to this on your lecture, how could you write a note about that particular definition and sentence? Look at what I have below. Insomnia common disorder. That could be your note. No more than that. Notice that I'm not using insomnia is a common disorder. Is and a are not words I'm using, right? Because those are function words. Is and a. Insomnia is a common disorder. I'm not using is and a. I'm merely using insomnia common disorder. Why? Because the three of those words are information words. They are words that when you read them, ideas come to your mind very immediately. And this helps you to remember what you already listened, that insomnia was a consistent disorder and very much common one to fall asleep. So if you write this, you're going to remember rapidly, okay? Look at the other example. It is not uncommon for people suffering from insomnia to experience increased levels of anxiety about their inability to fall asleep, okay? So how could you write down a particular note on this sentence? More anxiety falling asleep. If you write down this note in order to remember this information, if you read this, like these 4 words, more anxiety falling asleep, what comes to your mind? That people who suffer insomnia have more anxiety and they have problems to fall asleep. Tell me if it is not the case. Of course, because these words are all of them information words, okay? So personally, I think this is a fantastic technique. It's very useful and it's very easy to implement. It's not something that you have to memorize, because people on internet, they offer a lot of techniques and very difficult, let's say, strategies to take notes. And I think that is at the end very much, that is very much, well, disadvantageous, and it's not very much productive. Because if you are more concentrated about following your own system to take notes, at the end, notes are going to become your priority. And as I say, you don't want that, because your priority should always be listening and internalizing what you're listening. But taking notes is merely a secondary and auxiliary task you're trying to implement, right? So as I say, instead of following all those crazy techniques and strategies on the internet, try to do this. That is very easy to implement. Just write down information words and always leave out of your notes this type of words like is, like like the, like and, may, could, are simply useless and, as I say, unproductive words, okay? Number 4, try to write abbreviated words. This is very important. For example, you remember the difference between consonants and vowels? Vowels consist of the letters A, E, I, O, and U, right? And sometimes Y. Consonants are the other letters like B, C, D, F, and so on. So here's the interesting part. Vowels are so common, not only in English, but also in Spanish, that you could write a word without any of its vowels and still understand the meaning. Okay, it's very interesting. So what's the thing here? So remember that the counseling here is writing abbreviated words. Now, how can you abbreviate words? That is a technique. Instead of writing complete words, try to, let's say, supreme and try to obviate the inclusion of vowels in your notes. Because as I mentioned, vowels are so common and we are so used to them on our minds that taking notes, including vowels in our words, is something that is not necessary. For example, look at my box here on the right side of my screen. It says asleep. So if you write SLP instead of writing sleep in one of your notes, if you write this consciously, knowing that sleep, you are abbreviating it to SLP, you're going to be able to remember it and notice that you are writing an abbreviated word. What does that mean to you? It means that you're going to have more time to take notes in the future. It means that you are not concentrating too much on writing the word correctly. It means that you are prioritizing, internalizing information. And as I say, this is just a technique. You can use any other manner to abbreviate words. The idea is to abbreviate words. For example, I had some students in the past that told me the way I do it is that in order to abbreviate words, I merely write the first 3 letters of the word. For example, if they were to write sleep, they just wrote SLE. That was their technique, and fantastic, because as I say, the idea is to abbreviate words. Instead of writing complete and entire words, try to abbreviate them as much as you can, okay? That's the idea at the end. And you can actually throw some vowels sometimes when you feel it's difficult to remember the words. For example, anxiety. If you believe that you are not able to remember it without any vowel, write AMXTY. It's okay. At the end, as I say, the idea is to abbreviate words in any possible way you can find to abbreviate those words, it's going to be totally fine. Okay. And by doing so, trust me, your notes are not also going to be more balanced, but way more smaller. And if you're checking the IBT version home edition, especially, you're gonna be always very much thankful about that, okay, of having very short and small notes. That's very important. Great. So that's it with regard to the explanation I wanted to make of some techniques and strategies to decrease the length of your notes. Is there any question with regard to this particular issue, dear students? Something that I could clarify here? Is there something that you would like to ask, dear Elsa? Okay. No, my pleasure. Thank you very much, Elsa. So we're going to stop our class here tonight. Tomorrow, we're going to start with the types of questions. And then the entire week, we're going to dedicate it to practice, okay? This important part. So please, as I tell your assistants, okay, please help me with your kind responses to our traditional poll before you go. And as I said, tomorrow we're going to be practicing. Well, no, we're going to evaluate some types of questions before, and then we're going to be practicing in the rest of the week. So please help me with that as I take your assistance here very rapidly. Okay, let me look for you. Okay, great. Here you are. Elsa Maria Cain. Okay, I got you. Don't worry. Okay, there you are, present. Thank you. Well, thank you very much, dear Elsa, for having joined me. Okay, it's always a pleasure. And as I say, I see you tomorrow. Okay, in order to, well, to finalize. Okay. No, it's okay, dear Elsa. Don't worry. Please help me with the traditional poll. Okay, before you go. I'm not sure if you have responded yet. Yeah, as I said, it's like you have to be here tomorrow. I'm gonna end it. I'm gonna relaunch it. Maybe that's what happens. Okay. Sorry. And let me just give me a second. Like that. Okay, please, now you can take it. So yeah, I see you tomorrow, okay? In order to finalize with our explanation of the theoretical aspects of the listening section. And on Thursday and Friday, we're just gonna practice for this, okay? So thank you very much, and I see you tomorrow. Have a wonderful night, dear Elsa. Thank you very much.